Quotation from myself, segment 44. Quotation number 538. Overwhelmed by the fear of death, man would embrace any imaginable notion of immortality, even such an abstract one as continuing to live through atoms into which everything eventually disintegrates. 539. No matter how hard you may try to please everybody, people would never forgive you their suspicion that precisely because of this you may be better and brighter than they are. 540. By looking at the animal world around us, it is not difficult to observe that it is divided mainly into predators and prey. Of course, the position of some small number of animals is relative in this regard, for depending on circumstances, they can sometimes be predators and sometimes prey. Moreover, we, the humans, consider such a division as natural, even beneficial for the common good of the animal world, and have no moral objection to the fact, for example, that wolves to survive have to kill and eat sheep. But what about the position of man himself in the animal world at large? For man is undeniably an animal. Is he a prey or a predator? With the exception of the fact that on a very rare occasion man can become a prey, he is most certainly not only a predator, but probably the most voracious one. In this state of affairs, the majority of us, vegetarians are excluded, also find quite natural and morally acceptable. Finally, we must look inside the human species. In what relations men stand to each other. And if we are not totally or intentionally blind, we would see that, as in the animal world, some men, usually the small minority, act as predators. For by analogy with their animal counterparts, their behavior, short of actually eating human flesh, which, by the way, was still practiced quite recently in some remote parts of this world, can be safely called predatory. At the same time, the reaction of the majority of mankind to such a behavior is definitely reminiscent of that of a prey. Yet, very few of us would consider this as a natural phenomenon. Most would strongly object, in public at least, to such a state of affairs on moral grounds. But why do we apply different standards to the animal and human worlds? What makes us humans so different? The reference to God, who has allegedly created all men equal and put man above the rest of his creation, cannot be considered as valid. For first, it has to be proven that God exists, and second, that if he does, he is indeed a proponent of equality among men and the champion of man as the supreme and separate from the rest of the natural creatures. Bearing that, just by looking at people with the unobstructed by religion or ideology eyes, it is easy to see how different they all are. The few want more than anybody else have and are willing to do anything to get it from the rest. for there is no other place to get what they want and as much as they want. And these are the human predators. The rest, who are more or less satisfied most of the time with what little they have, are reluctant to defend it, unless their very physical survival is at stake. And often even that is not enough to encourage them to resist. And they are the prey. Moreover, since such a division has been observed from the times immemorial, we should have enough courage to admit that such a division must be natural too. And if it is natural, we can do very little about it. Some quantitative adjustment can be made through social legislation, provided of course there is means to do it, but the qualitative division of mankind on predator and prey will always be with us. Number 541. Hamlet's tragedy is a tragedy of a man torn between his overwhelming sense of justice and truth and his inability to hate those who commit injustice and kill the truth. Or to be more precise, to hate them enough to act upon it. What is even worse, he perceived the absence of hate or resolve in his heart as a grave character flaw and desperately tries to correct it. And although he is constantly enraged over the evil deeds of various villains, he is equally constantly frustrated by his own weakness of not being able to properly respond to it. Hamlet's tragedy also lies in the fact that although he has very little in common with the society he is, by virtue of his birth a part of, he accepts nevertheless the code of behavior that essentially alien to him society imposes on and demands from each of its members under specific circumstances, which in his case is to become a cold-blooded killer to avenge the murder of his father king. This conflict between Hamlet as an individual, thoughtful and sensitive, more inclined to studying and contemplation than to action, and Hamlet, the son of a king, the warrior, who is expected to act in a resolute and, if necessary, ruthless way, is his main source of suffering. Thus, Hamlet's tragic dilemma is that in order to fulfill the social expectation, which he automatically perceives as his own, and to murder his father's murderer, he has to kill first Hamlet the man, his individuality, his essence. At the end, Hamlet the prince wins, and Hamlet the man loses, yet not so much but his own choice, as by virtue of circumstances which are beyond his control. Nevertheless, the deed is done. Claudius is killed by Hamlet the prince, and Hamlet the man has to die also, for at this moment his physical death becomes simply a formality. Hamlet as a unique individual is dead already.